Reinhard Heydrich in 22 minutes. Reinhard Heydrich was born on March 7, 1904, in the town of Halle in eastern central Germany. His mother, Elisabeth, came from a wealthy family while his father, Richard, was a well-known tenor singer, composer and patriotic German. From a young age, Reinhard and his siblings were raised in an environment that fostered love for their country and a passion for music. Reinhard showed exceptional talent in playing the violin and excelled in sports like swimming and fencing. The outbreak of the First World War in 1914 had a profound impact on Reinhard's family's wealth and prosperity, as Germany's economy gradually declined during the conflict. Radical, far-left political groups emerged, attempting to seize control of the various German states through violent actions. In response, right-wing nationalist movements arose, blaming the far left for the nation's weakening and defeat. In 1919, at the age of 15, Reinhard found himself in his hometown amid skirmishes that resulted in the communist takeover of the town. He joined the local Freikorps unit and played a role in reclaiming the town from the communists. Germany faced widespread discontent, exacerbated by food shortages, unemployment, and hyperinflation, which made basic necessities like bread unaffordable. The military became one of the few job opportunities for middle-class young men like Reinhard, leading him to enlist in the German Navy in 1922 as a cadet. Excelling in his training, he was promoted to midshipman in 1924 after completing officer training. Reinhard's striking appearance and growing status brought him attention and led to various love affairs with numerous women. Among them was his future wife, Lena von Osten, a committed member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Introduced to the party by her brother, Lena attended one of Hitler's early mass rallies. Reinhard and Lena publicly announced their engagement, but their relationship faced turmoil when the father of one of Reinhard's former lovers, a friend of a high-ranking naval officer, accused him of abandoning his daughter after promising to marry her. Charged with conduct unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman, Reinhard was dismissed from the German Navy in April 1931. Despite the setback, Lena stood by Reinhard's side, and the couple married in December 1931. They went on to have 4 children. Lena's decision not to break their engagement proved pivotal in Reinhard's life, as he found himself unemployed and desperate. With Lena's assistance and connections within the Nazi Party, Reinhard's fortunes were about to change. The SS, initially formed in 1925 as a close protection or bodyguard unit, held little significance until 1929, when Heinrich Himmler, a former chicken farmer from Munich, became its Reichsführer. Himmler shared Hitler's belief in the superiority of the Germanic peoples, but possessed an even greater fanaticism, driven to realize the Nazi dream of a pure Aryan master race by any means necessary. In 1929, the SE remained a minor part of the Nazi Party machinery, but Himmler harbored grand ambitions and aimed to wield the S as a tool to enhance his personal power and spread his racist ideologies. Seeking expansion, Himmler ordered the establishment of a new SS intelligence unit in 1931 and commenced interviewing candidates to lead it. Reinhard Heydrich managed to secure an interview with Heinrich Himmler thanks to his wife's connections within the Nazi Party. Despite his lack of prior experience in intelligence work, Heydrich impressed Himmler, who appointed him as the head of S intelligence. Although Heydrich initially received a low salary, he fully dedicated himself to his new role and established intelligence networks to gather information on Nazi opponents and to blackmail officials. Over time, Heydrich's competence became evident, and his reputation grew. However, he faced a significant setback when allegations regarding his rumored Jewish ancestry emerged. The Nazi Party launched an internal investigation which ultimately confirmed the purity of Heydrich's bloodline. Despite the investigation's findings, rumors about his ancestry persisted for years, though few dared to voice them openly. In 1932, as a reward for his services, Himmler appointed Heydrich to lead the newly renamed and reorganized SS security service, now known as the SD. In the following months, the SD expanded its influence and assumed control of regional police forces. This occurred at an opportune time as Adolf Hitler became Germany's Chancellor on January 30, 1933, in a coalition government. Hermann Göring, a close follower of Hitler and a former the First World War fighter ace, became the Minister-President of Prussia. He took charge of the Prussian police, Germany's largest police force. Within the Prussian police, two smaller departments dealt with intelligence and political affairs. Göring merged these departments into a single entity called the Geheime Staatspolizei, or Gestapo, staffed by Nazi Party members. The Gestapo served as a means to suppress other political parties in Germany. Shortly thereafter, Hitler secured a majority within the Reichstag through a rigged election in March 1933, effectively ending German democracy. In 1934, Heydrich assumed the position of head of the Gestapo and the SD, becoming the country's police and intelligence chief. The Gestapo was Germany's foremost secret police service at the time, wielding significant power. However, it also became a target for other influential factions within the Nazi hierarchy, particularly the SS and the SA. The SA, led by Ernst Röhm, was the paramilitary arm of the Nazi Party and consisted of 2 million men. It posed a threat to other state agencies responsible for policing and defense, including the armed forces. Pressure mounted, both internally and externally, to rein in the SA and its leadership. Recognizing that gaining control of the country's police forces and intelligence services would enhance the SS's power, Himmler and Heydrich focused on securing the Prussian police and assimilating the Gestapo into the SS. However, Hitler's approval was necessary for such a transfer. As time went on, it became increasingly apparent that both Göring and his subordinates were ineffective in controlling the unruly SA, which engaged in arbitrary violence and interrogation of thousands of German citizens, further diminishing the Nazis' popularity. In April 1934, Hitler took action and appointed Himmler as an inspector of the Gestapo, although Göring still maintained overall control of the organization. At the age of 30, Heydrich was appointed as the head of the Gestapo and the SD. Himmler firmly positioned the SS behind Hitler, while Ernst Röhm's demands for the German army to merge with the SA and his public insults against Hitler sealed his fate. Hitler ordered Göring to compile a list of individuals to be eliminated in what would become known as the Night of the Long Knives. The Night of the Long Knives served to satisfy the German army, the political establishment, and Hitler himself. By eliminating his enemies, Hitler consolidated his power and demanded loyalty from his followers, particularly the SAS, who had to demonstrate their allegiance by participating in the Purge. As a result, both Himmler and Heydrich emerged as two of the most influential figures in Nazi Germany in 1934. In 1936, Himmler assumed control over all the diverse German police forces, granting him and Heydrich mastery over security and policing throughout the Third Reich. A clear chain of command was established within the SS, with Himmler answering directly to Hitler and Heydrich answering to both Hitler and Himmler. By this time, the Gestapo operated with impunity, and its agents were immune from legal challenges. Only internal investigations within the organizations could address any concerns regarding their actions. Heydrich worked closely with Heinrich Müller, the head of Gestapo operations, to expand the number of Gestapo agents and informants, fostering a culture of fear and suspicion across the country. During this period, concentration camps began to proliferate throughout Germany. These camps were designed to detain and concentrate individuals deemed undesirable or enemies of the state. Detainees were often subjected to mistreatment and even murder if they posed a threat to the regime. The persecution of Jews escalated in 1935 with the enactment of the Nuremberg Laws, which prohibited marriages between Jews and non-Jews, aiming to preserve the purity of German blood. In 1936, Heydrich was tasked with organizing the Berlin Olympics. A significant challenge was suppressing anti-Jewish activities during the Games to avoid international criticism. Following the Olympics, Hitler turned his attention to the annexation of Austria, and Heydrich played a crucial role in mobilizing support among the Austrian population through his agents. The Austrian government attempted to resist through a referendum, but Hitler declared it fraudulent and disregarded its outcome. German troops subsequently occupied Austria on March 12, 1938. While the German armed forces were welcomed by cheering crowds, the SSE and the Gestapo were busy silencing and eliminating anyone perceived as a threat to the new order. During this time, Jews still had the ability to leave Nazi-controlled territories, and Heydrich established an SS office in Vienna to facilitate their emigration. Adolf Eichmann, who would later become one of Heydrich's key associates, headed this office and played a significant role in implementing the final solution. Heydrich also oversaw the formation of special units within the SS and the Gestapo known as Einsatz commandos. These units were responsible for securing public buildings and government officials. They were later reorganized into the Einsatzgruppen, who played a crucial role in subjugating and eliminating undesirable elements behind German lines during Hitler's military invasions. In 1938, Heydrich was involved in one of the most infamous actions against Jews leading up to the war in Europe. On November 9, a German diplomat in Paris was assassinated by a Jewish refugee. In response, Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, delivered a speech indicating that the Nazi government would not organize demonstrations but would not prevent any that might occur. This effectively granted individuals the freedom to attack Jews without fear of state intervention. In response, Heydrich issued precise instructions to the Reichs police service not to intervene in the anti-Jewish riots sparked by Goebbels' speech. These riots, which took place from November 9 to November 10, 1938, became known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, due to the shattered windows from Jewish properties that littered the streets afterward. Tens of thousands of Jews were arrested, subjected to violence, and had their homes and businesses vandalized. In 1938, Hitler shifted his focus to the Czechoslovakian territories, which had significant populations of German speakers. Although the German army was prepared to invade, Hitler managed to secure the Munich Agreement from France and Britain, in which he pledged not to pursue further territorial expansion. However, he reneged on his promise, and in the spring of 1939, German forces occupied the remainder of Czechoslovakia. Heydrich's Gestapo and SS swiftly moved through the country, targeting individuals deemed a threat. Czechoslovakia was now under German control. Hitler then set his sights on Poland in 1939, and with the assistance of Himmler, Heydrich and Müller attempted to justify the invasion by fabricating an attack on a German radio station by the Polish army. However, this plan was overshadowed by the full-scale invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, prompting France and Britain to declare war on Germany. Following a fierce struggle, Hitler's forces occupied the western half of Poland, while the eastern half was invaded by Soviet forces. Heydrich's forces accompanied the army into Poland, where they engaged in acts of terror and enforced the segregation of the Jewish population into ghettos. This led to the deaths of tens of thousands due to starvation and disease. As Germany expanded its territory, the responsibilities and size of the SS, effectively under Heydrich's control, grew. This encompassed both uniformed and plainclothes police, domestic and overseas security services, and Gestapo, tasked with eliminating all forms of opposition. The expansion of the SS was directly tied to the territories Germany held. The occupation of France, along with the rise of resistance movements and the activities of the Special Operations Executive, SOE, aided by the British, posed challenges for Heydrich and his subordinates. After Hitler's failed invasion of Britain in 1940, his attention turned toward the Soviet Union, ordering the German armed forces, including the SS, to prepare for the invasion in 1941. During Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, Heydrich's forces were responsible for the estimated killing of over 2 million Jews. They often carried out mass executions, targeting entire populations and settlements. including women and children, without any legal proceedings. One particularly heinous example occurred in September 1941, when over 33,000 people were brutally murdered in just 2 days. However, it can be argued that Heydrich's actions significantly undermined Germany's chances of victory in the Soviet Union. The reign of terror-fueled animosity among the local populations, squandering an opportunity to gain their support. These irrational decisions, including the systematic extermination of entire populations, weakened Germany's overall war effort in the long run. Additionally, Heydrich served as a pilot in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War, undertaking numerous combat missions during the early stages of the conflict. This is remarkable, considering his high-ranking position within the Nazi hierarchy, as his death or capture would have dealt a significant blow to the regime. However, Heydrich's career as a fighter ace was cut short when he crashed his plane behind enemy lines in June 1941. After evading Soviet troops and returning to German lines, Himmler forbade him from flying combat missions again. In September of 1941, Reinhard Heydrich assumed the role of Deputy Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia, with the mission of suppressing Jeek resistance and reviving arms production. He employed a combination of rewards and punishments to achieve his objectives. While resistance or strikes were met with severe consequences, workers were incentivized with improved pensions and working conditions. Heydrich was also appointed by Hitler, Göring, and Himmler to oversee the plans for the final solution to the Jewish question. Starting in the latter part of 1941, he took charge of its implementation. The Wannsee Conference held in Berlin on January 20, 1942, saw Heydrich's chair a meeting of various Reich Department heads to finalize his plans for the final solution. During the conference, Heydrich presented his strategy to transport Europe's 11 million Jewish population from west to east under the guise of evacuation. This euphemism served as a cover for their extermination, contributing to the disturbing rise of Holocaust denial. However, the later testimony of Adolf Eichmann, captured by Israeli agents in Argentina, revealed that the participants discussed the subject of extermination candidly towards the end of the conference. This testimony serves as concrete evidence of the Holocaust and refutes the deniers. Heydrich also stipulated the criteria for determining who would be evacuated to avoid potential legal challenges that could impede the process. Essentially, individuals with at least 2 Jewish grandparents were considered Jewish. However, those with 2 Jewish grandparents who were married to non-Jews were spared, while those with 1 Jewish grandparent married to a Jew were still classified as Jewish. The Nazis' determination to eradicate Jews from Europe was evident in the fact that even individuals who had never practiced the Jewish faith or had Jewish parents could end up in gas chambers. Following the Wannsee Conference, plans for the implementation of the final solution were set in motion, resulting in the construction of permanent gas chambers at death camps, like Auschwitz and Treblinka by the spring of 1942. These death camps, along with other concentration camps and the activities of the Einsatzgruppen led by Heydrich and Himmler, led to the deaths of over 6 million Jews, potentially reaching up to 17 million when including political prisoners and prisoners of war. During the peak of his career in the spring of 1942, Heydrich's power within the Nazi hierarchy was at its zenith, as Germany had yet to face significant setbacks on the Eastern Front. However, his brutality and ruthlessness would ultimately lead to his downfall. The Czech government in exile, led by Edward Beneš and with the assistance of František Moravec, former head of Czech intelligence, identified Heydrich as a target for assassination. In an effort to gain diplomatic leverage, the Czech government in exile, with the approval of the British government, trained Czech soldiers for a mission codenamed Anthropoid. Jan Kubis and Josef Gabčík were chosen to carry out the operation and were airdropped into Czechoslovakia in December 1941. Although they were not dropped at the intended location, they were luckily discovered by Czech resistance members and smuggled into Prague. Equipped by the British with collapsible submachine guns and grenades, Kubis and Gabčík found Heydrich living in an occupied city with a careless attitude toward personal security. Heydrich often traveled from his villa to his headquarters in Prague Castle in an open-top Mercedes, accompanied only by his driver. Himmler, who visited Prague in April 1942, was appalled by Heydrich's disregard for his own safety. However, Heydrich's characteristic arrogance led him to ignore orders to travel with an armed escort. After carefully studying Reinhard Heydrich's daily routine and the route he took into Prague, Jan Kubis and Joseph Gabčík selected a suitable location to carry out their attack. They identified a wide bend in the road where they planned to ambush Heydrich's car as it slowed down. However, their plan took an unexpected turn when they discovered that Heydrich was scheduled to leave Prague for Berlin, with the possibility of being reassigned to Paris to quell the growing resistance movements there. As a result, the decision was made to execute Operation Anthropoid before Heydrich's departure for Berlin. On the morning of May 27, 1942, as Heydrich was driving along his usual route, he was suddenly confronted by Czech commandos. One of the attackers, Gabčík, attempted to shoot Heydrich but encountered a jammed gun. Seizing the opportunity, Heydrich made a fatal error by stepping out of his car, allowing Kubis to throw a contact grenade at him. The grenade detonated, causing severe injuries as shrapnel pierced Heydrich's side. He was swiftly transported to a hospital, where doctors made valiant efforts to save his life. However, despite their endeavors, Heydrich succumbed to sepsis a week later on June 4, 1942, at the age of 38. Heydrich's death sparked fury within Hitler and the Nazi hierarchy, leading to brutal and merciless reprisals. The Nazi regime organized an elaborate state funeral for Heydrich, honoring him with full military pomp and circumstance. He was laid to rest in Berlin, and many believe his body remains there to this day. Following Heydrich's demise, the responsibility for executing the final solution fell to his subordinates, most notably Adolf Eichmann, who expedited the plans that Heydrich had orchestrated. Renowned for his exceptional capabilities, ruthlessness, and chilling demeanor, Heydrich was among the most malevolent figures within the Nazi elite. Had he survived, millions more innocent lives would have perished under his tyrannical rule. Some speculate that had Germany emerged victorious in the Second World War, Heydrich's ambition and aptitude might have propelled him to become the Führer himself. Imagining such a scenario is a terrifying thought, considering the implications it would have had on the world.